So let's talk about how to factor. What is factoring? When you factor, you unmultiply. So the first step in factoring a quadratic especially is to take out a greatest common factor. Well, what is taking out a greatest common factor? Taking out a greatest common factor is like undistributing. So for a second, let's back up and see what happens when you distribute, when you go frontwards. Let's just take a problem. So let's look at 3x times 5x minus 2. How would you distribute the 3x into this? Well, the first thing you want to do is multiply each thing. So 3x times 5x is 15x squared. And 3x times minus 2 is minus 6x. Now look at the relationship between what you started with and what you wound up with. Because factoring is going backwards. So let's look at a problem. If I have 12x squared plus 8x, and I want to know where did this come from, in other words. I want to factor it. I want to undo the distributing that was done in the first place. Well, first you need the largest number that will go into both of these. Now if you look at 12 and 8, the largest number that's going to go into both of those is 4. Now look at your x's. You've got x squared and you've got x. Now what's the largest exponent of x that will go into both of these? Well, it's the smallest one that you have. You've got x squared and you've got x. All right, x squared will go into this, but it's too large to go into this one, whereas the x will go into both of them. So our greatest common factor for this binomial is 4x. Now, you ask yourself, we're going to have a plus sign, what did I have to multiply 4x by to get 12x squared? Well, you had to multiply it by 3x. And what did you have to multiply 4x by to get 8x? Just 2. So you just factored this first binomial. You took out something, but you didn't lose its value. This is still equal to this. So let's look at one more. Okay, we're going to factor this. X squared y to the 5th z plus 2xy to the 3rd. We've got two terms here. So first I have to figure out what is the greatest common factor. What's common, what will go into both of them, and what's the largest thing. All right, I don't have a coefficient here, even though I have a 2 here. So I'm not going to have a number in my greatest common factor. So let's look at these variables. Now I do have an x in both of them. So that's a common factor. Now let's look at the exponents. I have an x to the 2nd and an x to the 1st. So I need the smallest one because it has to go into both of them. So x to the 1st is going to be that. Now let's look at the y's. I have a y in both of these. So I know I'm going to have that base number. Now what exponent? Well, I've got a y to the 5th and a y to the 3rd. Which one is the smallest? Y to the 3rd. Now that's all there is to choosing, because I don't have a z in both of them, so I'm not going to have a z here. Now I need to figure out what do I have when I pull this out of both, when I divide it out of both, because I'm unmultiplying. Well, what do you have to multiply x y to the 3rd by to get this? Well, I need another x, don't I? Remember, when you multiply, you add exponents. So when you're factoring, you're subtracting them. All right, y to the 3rd, what would you multiply y to the 3rd by to get y to the 5th back? You're going to need a y to the 2nd. And then I don't have a z, I need one, so I'm going to have one over here. All right, now your sign matches, so I've got plus. All right, what do I need to multiply this by to get this number back? Well, I don't have a 2, and I need one, so I'm going to have a 2 here. Now, my x's already match, so I don't need one more of those. All right, what do I need here? Y 3rd. I already have a y to the 3rd, so I'm finished. Now, to check it, if you multiplied this back together, would you get this original? Well, if I multiply x y to the 3rd times x y squared z, I'm going to get x to the 2nd y, add your exponents to the fifth, z, plus, now what about when I multiply this times the 2? I'm going to get 2x y to the third. Now do you see how this just keeps making a circle? You're factoring and then unfactoring, factoring and unfactoring. This was the goal, and this is what I did to check it. All right, so this is the first step in factoring quadratics. It's taking out a greatest common factor. Good job.